My name is Daniel. This is my son Byron, and I have been sober for 422 days. Man, he means the world to me. He's like the number one, my number one. He's the only thing that matters. He's the thing that keeps me going every single day, and he's the one that needs me the most. So I'm gonna be here for him.
He's doing really well. It's amazing how much he's transitioned since his son came into his life.
From what everything I've seen, he's a great dad. He's a loving, caring, compassionate dad. He understands the importance of being there and being there all the time. And that's the biggest lesson we could expect from any father or mother.
Oh, I can see a lot of difference on there. That baby, when I take care of him and then he sees his dad, oh my goodness, he is so proud of his dad.
I think he means the world to him. It's his number one priority. He brings him in here, and I'm pretty confident he's a good dad and will continue to be a good dad.
Oh man, so he's an amazing dad. I think that little boy of his has brought out a whole different person. The maturity Daniel has now is outstanding.
His boy. He really does. I think that really is the key to his foundation.
He was, Daniel was a good little boy. He always did what I told him to do, and he played a lot. He liked to play with his sisters and brothers. Oh, well, I'd say when he was like 14, 15 years old, is when he started doing weed, I think, and then it just got a little worse, but he did okay for a while until he was like maybe 17, 18, and then he didn't want to finish school, so he just kind of like went into his own little world. And then I noticed that he was doing more than just weed.
See, at first it was really just to fit in. I started doing marijuana at 13, and then 14 I started doing harder drugs, and it's just kind of been a downhill spiral after that, and never really had any help, and finally I just got into the meth and the heroin, and that made it even worse because it made me do things that I never thought that I would do.
He was so good before then, but then I think it had a lot to do with, he lost his dad when he was 3 years old. And then I got married again, and I never should have. It was awful. But I threw my husband out. So I don't have him around anymore, which is good. But then he just kept going on more and more, and I had to throw him out of the house.
Get up right away, go out, find some way to get my morning fix so that way I wouldn't be sick, and then all throughout the day just pretty much consuming it, just trying to find different ways on how to get it. And it was a struggle, and it sucked because, like I said, I did things that I never thought that I would do.
Because he was stealing from me, and I just couldn't take that anymore. So I just told him he had to leave. So it was awful, but I knew I had to do it. And seeing him a lot of times out there struggling, trying to to live out there, and I think he lived in, he didn't have no place to go. But I told him I would not take him back until he learned, you know, that life was more than what he was doing, so.
Honestly, I think the low point was when maybe my third time that I had went to jail, and I started to think, man, I really hate this place. I really hate being here. I'd rather just, you know, stay out, but I don't know how I could stay out. I think Teddy had came to me and asked me if I wanted to be in drug court, and I told him, well, I asked him a little bit about what it was, and he told me what it was, and you know, I went back and talked to a couple of people. Some of them were saying no, and then I had talked to Darren about it, and you know, he gave me some pretty good advice, which was don't get high, which you know, it's pretty easy once you stop doing that.
You know, he was kind of wild card. We didn't really know what to expect. He was immature. He didn't have a significant criminal history, but he had picked up a number of cases in pretty quick succession, and they were all seriously drug related.
Daniel was a struggle in the beginning, and I think it was because he was very much entangled in a relationship that he knew was very toxic. But Daniel is one of those very loyal people, and he didn't want to give up on her and felt like it was his responsibility to help her get sober, and it was bringing him down. And so I was pretty worried about him in the beginning.
You know, he was really struggling at that time. He was having relapses. He was in a bad relationship. Him and his girlfriend at the time were both using, and it just wasn't a good situation. He kept getting in more and more trouble the more and more he spent time with her. He also, you know, wasn't telling the group about her, and so it just wasn't good overall with them.
Okay, so he had some hiccups along the way. He really struggled with honesty at times. There was a few positive UAs for alcohol and cocaine, and there was times though he did without even being asked. He was forthcoming, but then there was some things that he ran into with being honest with community service. And that's when we decided to put him in the SSIC group to really kind of work on that criminal thinking, because he had the sobriety. He was good to go with the sobriety, but there was still that criminal thinking of trying to kind of act impulsively to get away with something. And so throughout the SSIC group with me, he was really able to identify why he was doing that, what kind of how it made it worse rather than better.
Once he realized that she was never going to change and she was bringing him down, I think he had a few stints in jail, and he started to realize that that's not the life that he wanted anymore. And he ended up breaking up with her, asking her to move out. And after that, he started to make progress.
Well, you know, I thought I'd break out my file for Daniel just to kind of give you an idea of his journey through the program, because I think that's really what this is all about. I keep records myself of each hearing, and you can see this is probably the largest file that I've had, and I think that's kind of indicative of the journey that Daniel had. He started off, he was fine for a little bit. He had bumps in the road. He got back on track. He'd have another bump, and then he'd have a bigger bump, then he'd get back on track. He had a couple of real big bumps through this process, and quite frankly, I think myself and other team members were at a point that, you know, really, is this going to work?
Honestly, I think the turning point was when I had my son. When I had him, it was the time to where it was like, okay, I'm done. I need to grow up. I need to get, I need to just get into, you know, the right mindset and quit doing this criminal thinking, and because it's not going to get me nowhere in my life.
When we found out that Daniel had a baby, I think we were all very surprised and very scared for all of them because he had struggled so much with adulthood, I think, and figuring out what that looks like. He even admitted to me that he was afraid to be on his own because he had never done that before. Once his son was born and he realized that he needed to take care of him, he followed through with everything that social services asked for him to do so that he could get his son back.
And, you know, he worked. He picked himself up. I'm telling you, this kid, you know, we talk in drug court about falling down, picking yourself up, brushing off the dust and moving forward. Well, this kid, he didn't just fall, but he fell on his face. He cut himself up, he bruised himself up. But each time he picked himself up and he wiped his face off, he wiped his body off, he got the dust off, and he moved forward. And he moved forward knowing full well at times that the judge wasn't happy with him, the team wasn't happy with him, we didn't trust him, but he didn't give up. And I think that's really what and who Daniel is. He never gave up, even knowing full well that we didn't trust him because of some of the things he'd done.
I remember when he said he was going to change his life, and I think that's when he decided to do that. And I was very proud of him. As I kept telling him that so that he could, you know, so he could keep up doing it. But he did it, and that was the good thing.
Well, you know, he was moving forward. Daniel was moving forward. He was going in the right direction. He was still making some poor choices here and poor choices there. And then he became a dad. And, you know, at that point, it was all over but the crying. You could see each time he appeared in court, each time, and, you know, this is a time where we're doing things on video, so you could see, you know, the change in him, the change in his behaviors, the change in his attitude, the change in his perspective, and the recognition that he was responsible for another human life. And that was his baby. You know, he'd been involved in raising and helping out with his nieces and nephews, and from all that I had seen, he was a very good uncle, a supportive, loving, caring uncle. But when he became a dad, just like anyone who becomes a dad or a mother, you realize the importance of this life, your importance to someone's life, but more importantly, their importance to you. And it helped him, I think, turn the ultimate corner and kind of start fighting up that hill. And he fought and he didn't turn back.
It changed dramatically. There was no more thinking of myself, and pretty much when he was born I had to grow up and do things on my own, get my own house, and so I mean, him being here with me, he got me to really grow up. So, you know, I'm really happy that he's here.
He seems determined. He seems to have good goals in place of what he wants to do with his future, and I know that his son's his priority, so I really think that'll be his focus.
Amazing progress. I know he is going to do so well. I'm excited to see what it looks like in his future, and I'm excited to see, you know, how he and his son progress.
So my first impressions of Daniel is that he's an amazing father. I wasn't the district attorney when Daniel began, but when I see someone who takes such care and is willing to work with their child like Daniel has, from my perspective, that's somebody that we want in our community. And I'm impressed with his days of sobriety. I'm impressed with his ability to complete drug court. It's no easy feat. Congratulate you in every way.
Oh, I feel amazing. It's been a hard experience, but it was all for the good. So, you know, I'm completely blessed and happy that I was in this program, and you guys have done so much for me that I can't explain my gratitude towards you guys.
Every day for us something new. Open mind for a different view, and nothing else matters. Never care for what they do. Never care for what they do.
We're gonna throw it too. I'm not there.
Whoa, that was perfect.